3 weeks before my wedding, my father-in-law called me into the living room of his house in Ancaster, Ontario. The house where he had raised 4 children and hosted 30 years of Easter dinners and considered himself, without ever saying so directly, the kind of man whose judgment was not a matter of opinion but of record, and told me, with the particular stillness of someone who has rehearsed a thing until it no longer sounds like cruelty, that he and my mother-in-law would not be attending the ceremony. "You have a daughter," he said. "A daughter who is not ours." He said it the way you'd note a structural problem in a foundation, not with malice, with assessment. His name is Warren Beaumont, 68 years old, retired civil servant, 31 years with the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, a man who spent his career managing forest tenure agreements and had extended that same philosophy of risk management to his family life. Everything classified, everything weighted, every variable assigned a likelihood of complication. My daughter, Mia, who was 7 years old, who had just lost her first molar, who had a stuffed rabbit named Clover that she carried under one arm everywhere she went, and who had asked me the previous Tuesday, very carefully, whether she should call my fiancée Diane, or whether there was another word she was allowed to use. My daughter was, in Warren Beaumont's framework, a variable he had not accounted for and did not intend to absorb. His wife, Suzette Beaumont, 65, former school librarian, sat across the room near the window and looked at her hands. Not in disagreement, not in agreement. In the particular neutrality of a woman who has spent 4 decades in the proximity of a certain kind of certainty and has learned that silence is the easiest form of survival. I sat with it for a moment. "Her name is Mia," I said. "She's 7. I understand that," Warren said. "She lost her dad 14 months ago. I understand that as well, and she's the reason I know what I want my life to look like." He looked at me with the expression of a man who has heard an emotional argument and is waiting for it to finish so the real conversation can begin. "We wish you well," he said. "We love our daughter, but we won't be there." I drove home, not to my place. To Diane's, which was also, by then, mostly mine. The lights were on in the kitchen. I could see Mia's drawings taped to the window from the driveway, little figures with enormous heads, a rabbit that was definitely Clover, a house with smoke coming out of the chimney even though it was April. Diane was at the kitchen table with a mug of tea and a stack of patient files she was reviewing. She's a physiotherapist at McMaster University Medical Center on Main Street West in Hamilton. She is methodical in the way people who spend their days repairing function become methodical. Not cold, just organized, with the capacity to hold difficult things at arm's length long enough to do what needs to be done, and then feel them later, privately, at a time of her choosing. She looked up when I came in. I told her everything. She listened. She put the mug down. She was quiet for a moment in the way she goes quiet when she is processing something that has confirmed what she already suspected. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "Get married," I said. "The date doesn't change." She nodded. She picked up her tea. "Okay," she said. "Then that's what we do." Before I tell you what happened at the wedding, before I tell you about the thing Mia made at the kitchen table on a Thursday afternoon that I didn't see until she showed it to everyone, I need to tell you how we got here. My name is Andrew Kerrigan. I'm 44 years old. I work in commercial insurance, senior underwriter, Intact Financial in Hamilton, Ontario. I've been in the Hamilton area my whole adult life. Grew up in Stony Creek, bought a house on Rosewood Avenue in the East End when I was 32, a brick semi I've been slowly making livable ever since. The kind of renovation that takes longer than you plan, because you keep finding things behind the walls that require decisions you weren't ready to make. Mia's mother was a woman named Tara. We were not married. We had been together for 3 years. We're living together. We're building towards something. Tara was a primary care nurse at the Hamilton General Hospital on Barton Street East. She was organized, direct, funny in the quiet way of someone who works long shifts and has learned to find the absurdity in things as a form of endurance. She died in October of 2021. Sudden cardiac event. She was 34 years old. She was at work. She had just come off a 12-hour shift and was in the locker room, and she sat down on a bench and didn't get back up. Mia was 22 months old. I won't go into everything that followed because some of it belongs to me and Mia and isn't for a wider audience. What I'll say is this. There is a version of grief that makes you want to disappear, and there is a version that makes you understand, with a clarity that is almost violent, what actually matters. I found my way to the second version, not quickly and not cleanly, but I found it. Mia helped. Mia was the reason I kept getting up in the morning during the months when that wasn't a simple thing. I met Diane Beaumont in the spring of 2023 at a swimming lesson. Not our swimming lesson. Mia's. The Hamilton Jewish Community Center on Sherwood Drive runs a Saturday morning Learn to Swim program for kids. Mia had just turned 5 and was convinced she already knew how to swim, which was technically true if your definition of swimming includes keeping your eyes open underwater and going nowhere. I was sitting in the bleachers with coffee I'd picked up from the Tim Hortons on Upper James. The woman 2 seats to my left had a coffee from the same Tim Hortons. I noted this. We did not speak. The following Saturday we were in the same seats. She had the same coffee. I had the same coffee. The kid in the pool that was clearly hers was doing something in the shallow end that the instructor was trying, with visible patience, to redirect. My kid was doing something similar but with more splashing. Are they in the same group? I asked. Apparently, she said. How's it going for yours? She considered this. The report so far, she said, is mixed. We talked for 20 minutes while our respective children demonstrated a mutual commitment to doing things their own way in the water. By the end of the lesson, I had learned that her name was Diane, that she worked at McMaster, that she had grown up in the Ancaster area and moved to Hamilton proper 6 years ago, and that she was raising her son, Felix, alone following the end of a relationship that she described, without drama, as something that had run its course in a way that required a lawyer. Felix was 4. He was the one doing the thing with the splashing. We had coffee the following Saturday after the lesson at the Tim Hortons on Upper James because that was already, apparently, a pattern we had established without deciding to. By the summer of 2023, Felix and Mia were spending Saturday afternoons in the backyard on Rosewood Avenue, running through the sprinkler and conducting what Mia describes as research on various insects they found in the garden. By September, I was spending most of my free evenings at Diane's apartment on Lock Street South, not because I had planned it that way, but because it was where the people I liked most were. Felix was a compact, serious boy who spoke in full sentences from the age of 2, according to Diane, and who had decided, by the time I entered the picture, that he had strong opinions about which dinosaurs were actually the most dangerous, and was prepared to defend those opinions at length and with evidence. He wanted to know how insurance worked. I explained it as best I could. He said it sounded like betting but for adults. I told him that was not entirely wrong. Mia called him her best person, not best friend, best person. She was 5 and had apparently decided that the category of friend was insufficient. I brought Diane and Felix to my parents' place in Stony Creek for Thanksgiving 2023. My mother in Kerrigan, 71, made too much food, as she always does, because her theory is that the margin for error in hospitality is measured in surplus. My father, Dennis Kerrigan, I realize Dennis is on the list. I'll call him Patrick. Actually, I'll use Ted. My father, Ted Kerrigan, 73, retired electrician, 30 years with the IBEW Local 105, shook Diane's hand and asked her about physiotherapy with the genuine curiosity of man knees have been giving him trouble and who sees a potential resource. He taught Felix how to do a card trick before dinner. Felix practiced it 11 times at the table. The Thanksgiving at my in-laws was different. Diane had arranged it carefully, because Diane arranges things carefully. That is her way. We went to the Beaumont house in Ancaster in the second week of November 2023. Warren shook my hand. Suzette bent down and spoke to both children with the warmth of a former school librarian who genuinely likes children and knows how to talk to them. The meal was good. The conversation was polite. Warren asked me about the insurance industry with the interest of someone gathering data. I answered his questions. Nobody said anything wrong. But I have been in enough rooms in my life to read the temperature of one that is being managed. Something was being noted, filed, held in reserve. The filing came out the following spring, April 2024. I had decided, with the kind of clarity that comes from watching what actually makes your life feel like your life, that I wanted to marry Diane Beaumont. I called Warren first, not to ask permission. I was 44 years old and had earned, at some cost, the understanding that permission is not the same thing as courtesy. I called him as a courtesy. She's told me about your situation, Warren said. He didn't say daughter, he said situation. Mia, I said. Her name is Mia, I understand. He took me through his concerns in the deliberate way he takes through everything. I had a child who was not his daughter's. That child's mother had died. There were grief complications, psychological considerations, unpredictable elements in a child's development after early trauma. His daughter was 38. She had Felix to consider. She had her career. She was, in his estimation, taking on a weight that wasn't hers to carry, and he was concerned that I was not being fully honest, even with myself, about what I was asking her to absorb. He paused. Then he said, And Diane is still young enough to have children of her own. Has she thought about what this means for that? I sat with that for a moment. I'm going to ask her to marry me, I said. A pause. I'm asking you to wait. Think about this more carefully. I have been, I said, for over a year. I'm done thinking. On a Friday evening in May 2024, in the backyard on Rosewood Avenue, I asked Diane Beaumont to marry me. The kids were inside watching a movie. Felix had already fallen asleep on the couch, I suspected. The yard smelled like cut grass, and the neighbors 2 doors down were having a barbecue. I had a ring, a simple oval sapphire in yellow gold, because Diane had told me once, almost accidentally, that she'd always liked sapphires more than diamonds, and that she wasn't sure why. I had remembered that. She said yes before I finished the sentence. From inside the house, through the screen door, we heard a small voice. Are you guys getting married? Mia had not fallen asleep. Yes, I said, loud enough to carry. What came back through the screen door was not a word, it was a sound. The sound a 7-year-old makes when something she has been hoping for a long time has just become real. A kind of sustained intake of breath that turned into a noise that Diane and I still talk about. Then the sound of small feet on hardwood. I didn't know it yet, but that sound through the screen door was the beginning of everything Warren Beaumont was going to try to hold back. The formal rejection came in the 3rd week of August 2024, 3 weeks before the wedding date. I drove out to Ancaster on a Sunday afternoon. Warren was in the kitchen. Suzette made tea and sat near the window, the way she always positioned herself when the difficult conversations were happening. Present, but unaccountable. Warren spoke for about 15 minutes. He was not unkind. He was methodical. He laid out his position with the precision of a man who has spent 30 years managing files and has never once been confused about which column something belongs in. He and Suzette would not be attending. They loved Diane. They wished her no harm. But they could not, in good conscience, stand in a room and celebrate a decision they believed she was making without fully understanding the weight of what she was taking on. She's an exceptional woman, he said. She deserves a life she chose clearly. She has one, I said. She's choosing it right now. He shook his head slightly, not with anger, with the patience of someone who believes the other person will eventually understand. The child, he said, your daughter, she's been through significant trauma. That doesn't resolve. That complicates. And Diane has her own son to protect. Mia, I said. Her name is Mia. She is 7 years old. She has been through more in her life than either of us has been through in ours, and she has handled it with more grace than I would have at 30, let alone 7. She is not a complication. She is the clearest thing in my life. Warren looked at me. I hope it works out, he said. I genuinely do. I stood up. I thanked Suzette for the tea. I drove back to Hamilton. I called Diane from the 403. She picked up on the second ring. They're not coming, I said. A pause. Are you okay? I thought about it while the escarpment passed on my left, the way it does when you're heading east from Ancaster. Limestone and cedar and the long green ridge of it that's been there since before any of this. I'm clearer than I was this morning, I said. Then we're good, she said. We got married on September 14, 2024, at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington, Ontario, on the north shore of Cootes Paradise, in the Hendry Park section, where the late summer garden is still in full color and the light comes off the water in the afternoon, in a way that makes everything look like it's been kept. We chose it because Diane used to bring Felix there on Sunday mornings when he was a toddler. She had a membership. It was their place before it was ours. That mattered to us. 81 guests, no church, chairs in the garden in a long curved row with the water behind us and the late garden roses still open. Our friend Paulette, who has been Diane's closest friend since their undergrad days at McMaster, and who photographs things as a practice, not a profession, because she says the world moves too fast and she needs to slow it down, sat in the second row with her phone, not to document, just to be there, just in case that decision would matter. Mia walked down the aisle first. She had made the thing she was carrying on the Thursday before the wedding, at the kitchen table on Rosewood Avenue, while Diane was at work and Felix was at his grandfather's place on the other side of the city. It had been me and Mia and Clover the rabbit. She had asked me, with the seriousness she reserves for things she has decided are important, whether she could make something to carry at the wedding. I told her yes. I told her it was her job. I told her she could make it say whatever she thought it should say, and I would not look at it until she was ready. She worked at the table for the better part of an hour. She used a piece of white Bristol board from the art supplies in the cupboard, and a set of markers that had been a birthday gift from Felix, who had given her the good ones because, as he explained at the time, She was more serious about drawing than he was, and deserved the professional grade. She chose purple for the letters. She drew a small moon in the lower corner because, she told me afterward, the moon is always there even when you can't see it. She would not show me the finished product. It's for everyone, she said. Not just you. On September 14th, Mia walked out of the garden path wearing a pale yellow dress and her good shoes, with Clover the rabbit tucked under her left arm and the Bristol board held flat against her chest with both hands so that nobody could read it. She had decided this herself. The timing, the reveal. I had not coached her. She walked slowly, the way she walks when she is carrying something she considers important. Present in the way children are present when they have decided that a thing matters and they are not going to rush it. Halfway down the aisle, she stopped. She looked at the chairs on both sides. Then she turned the board around. It said, "He stayed. That's what dads do." Purple marker, careful letters. The kind a 7-year-old makes when she's taking her time. A small moon in the lower right corner. The garden went quiet. Then someone in the second row made a sound. Paulette, though she told me afterward she didn't remember making it. Just that her eyes had understood something before the rest of her caught up, and the sound had come out on its own. Then the woman beside her. Then the ripple of it, moving through 81 people in the way a wave moves through still water, and once it starts you can't find where it began, or where it ends. Paulette's phone was already up. Mia looked at the people crying with the mild, pleased curiosity of someone whose experiment has produced results. Then she turned back around and kept walking. She came to stand beside me at the front. She reached up and took my hand without looking. I held on. I did not know in that moment that within 60 hours 2 million people in Canada and beyond would see what she had written. I did not know what that would do to the people who needed to see it. Paulette posted the video Sunday evening. She posted it to her personal Facebook and Instagram with a caption that said, in its entirety, "This little girl just made me cry in a botanical garden and I have no regrets. Congratulations, Andrew and Diane." She tagged Diane. She tagged me. She did not tag Warren and Suzette, who were not on her Instagram, who did not know her, who were at home in Ancaster on a Sunday night that had nothing to do with any of this yet. By Monday morning it had been shared 18,000 times. By Monday evening it was close to 400,000. By Tuesday at noon, 2 million views across Facebook, Instagram, and the TikTok reposts that spread the way things spread when the internet has collectively recognized something it needed to see. The comments were, and I want to be careful about this word, overwhelming, not in the difficult sense. In the sense of volume and directness and the particular kind of emotion that comes when something lands in a place you didn't know needed landing. My kids call my husband by his first name and always have. Reading this at my desk and not doing okay. She made this herself. She planned the whole thing. A 7-year-old. That's it. That's the whole thing. I need to call my stepdad. I'm a widow with 2 kids, and I've been scared to date because of what people would think. This is why I shouldn't be. Diane handed me my phone Monday morning and didn't give it back until Tuesday evening. She handled the flood the way she handles most things, steadily, with discernment, letting through what mattered and releasing the rest. Warren called on Tuesday, not to congratulate us, to understand. He is at his core an analyst, and something had entered his field that did not fit his existing model, and he needed to map it. Of Mia, I said. No, of Mia, I said. Of what she made. Of what she decided to do with it. A pause. What does it say? You can find it, I said. It's not hard to locate. He found it. I know this because Suzette called me 40 minutes later, and Suzette, in the 21 months I had known her, had never called me directly. She had always communicated through Diane, or through the ambient social architecture of family gatherings. This was the first time her number appeared on my screen addressed only to me. Andrew. Her voice was different. The careful, managed warmth she maintained in social situations had dropped away into something underneath it, something older and less rehearsed. I should have been there. Yes, I said. You should have. Warren, Suzette. I'm not asking you to speak for him or to manage him. I'm just telling you the truth. You should have been there. And Mia deserved to walk toward a family that was present for it. A silence, long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. She made that herself, Suzette asked, very quietly. At the kitchen table, I said. On Thursday. She wouldn't show me what it said until she turned it around. Suzette was quiet for another moment. Can I meet her, she said, properly. Not, I know we've met. But can I actually meet her? When you're ready, I said. Call Diane. Warren took longer. He called on a Wednesday evening, 5 weeks after the wedding. He told me he had watched the video. He told me he had watched it more than once. He told me that people he had worked with, people in his neighborhood, people from his church had sent it to him across multiple platforms, which he said with a note of bewilderment that I suspected was partly genuine. He had not expected the world to involve itself in a decision he had considered private. He did not apologize the way people apologize in the version of this story you'd want to tell. All at once, cleanly, with full acknowledgement stacked into a single sentence. He apologized the way a man apologizes when he has been built a certain way for 68 years and is revising a foundational calculation and finds that it takes longer than he would like. He said, "I was wrong about what I said about what I called the situation. I didn't know her." "No," I said. "I'd like to," he said, "if that's something that's possible." I told him I'd talk to Diane and then I'd talk to Mia, and that Mia's answer was the one that mattered. Diane's answer was, his behavior was not okay. He can put in the work to fix it. Mia decides if she wants to be part of that. So we asked Mia. We sat with her at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening, her reading log spread out in front of her, and Clover the rabbit on the chair beside her, and we told her simply that Diane's mom and dad would like to meet her if she wanted to, but that there was absolutely no wrong answer and she could take as much time as she needed to decide. She asked to think about it overnight. The next morning at breakfast she said, "Okay, they can come, but I want to pick the activity." Diane said, "Done." Mia thought for a moment. "I want to go to Dundurn Castle," she said, because Mia had been to Dundurn Castle on a school trip in the spring and had decided it was the best building in Hamilton and possibly in Canada, a position she held with conviction. We went to Dundurn Castle on a Saturday in late October. Warren and Suzette met us at the gate. Suzette had brought something wrapped in tissue, a small field guide to Ontario birds, because Mia had mentioned birds at some point during a dinner months ago that Suzette had, apparently, been paying closer attention to than I realized. She crouched down at the entrance and held it out to Mia directly. Not as performance, as an offering. Mia took it, looked at the cover. "Are there loons in here?" she asked. "There are," Suzette said. "Good," said Mia. "I've seen a loon, but I didn't know what it was called until after." She took Suzette's hand and led her toward the castle entrance. Warren shook my hand. He looked the way men look when they have been carrying something for a while and have recently set it down, but haven't yet worked out how to stand without it. "The sign," he said, looking at me. "She made it herself," I said. "I didn't see it until she turned it around." He nodded. The nod of a man doing internal revision. "He stayed," he said quietly. "That's what she wrote. That's what she believed," I said. "Nobody told her to write it. She observed something and named it." We went through the castle. Mia took the lead, which is her instinct in any building she considers hers. She explained the kitchen restoration to Warren, with the authority of someone who has been here before and has done the reading. He asked questions, real questions, the kind that come from a man who has spent his career asking careful questions and cannot help himself. Mia answered them. Then she asked him if he used to work outside, because she had decided that he looked like someone who knew about trees. He told her about the forest tenure work. She wanted to know what tenure meant. He explained it as best he could. She said, "So you were in charge of making sure the trees stayed?" He paused. "More or less," he said. "That's a good job," she said, and went back to reading a plaque on the wall. Suzette found me in the east hallway while Mia was showing Felix and Warren the view from one of the upper rooms. "She extraordinary," Suzette said, not with the performance of someone who wants credit for saying it, just as a fact she had observed and felt compelled to name. "She is," I said. "She has been from the beginning." Suzette was quiet for a moment. "We missed the wedding," she said. "You did. That was a choice Warren made and that I didn't stop." "Yes." She looked out the window at the bay. "I should have stopped it," she said. "I knew when she walked down that aisle. When I saw the video, I knew what we had given up being part of. I can't undo that." "No," I said. "You can't. I can be here now." "You can," I said. "It is not a neat resolution. It is not the erasure of what happened in that kitchen in Ancaster in August 2024. Diane and her parents are working towards something. It is early and it is cautious and it is real precisely because it is not easy. Warren has not transformed. He has begun. That is different, and it counts for something, though it does not count for everything. The thing Mia made hangs in the hallway of the house on Rosewood Avenue now. Diane had it framed, white wood, clean glass, and hung it between the window and the door where the light hits it in the morning when you come down the stairs. He stayed. That's what dads do. The small purple moon in the corner, slightly uneven, exactly as she made it. Beside it, a photograph from the wedding. Mia halfway down the aisle, board turned outward, looking back at the camera over her shoulder, with the expression of someone who has executed a plan she thought through carefully and is satisfied with the result. Below both, a small card in Mia's handwriting. She asked to make it herself, because by then she understood that the wall was hers as much as anyone's. It says, Clover was there too. Mia is 8 now. She still has the field guide from Suzette. She has flagged 11 birds she's seen in person. The loon is flagged with a sticky note that says, Ike knew it. She still has Clover. She started calling Diane Mum sometime in November, not with announcement, not with ceremony. Just one day it was what came out of her mouth and it stayed. The way things stay when they're true. I stayed. She was right about that from the beginning. She usually is.